The alarm never went off, but I woke up anyway at 6:47 a.m. with my heart hammering like I'd been running. Sunlight cut through the blinds. I'd forgotten to close again, painting harsh lines across my studio apartment's scratched hardwood floor. And then it hit me. Not the usual Monday morning dread, or the familiar weight of another day at Morrison & Associates. This was different. This was knowing. I sat up in bed, my oversized Northwestern t-shirt twisted around my waist, and stared at the stack of marketing reports on my desk. The same reports I'd been working on when I died, 3 years from now, alone in this same apartment, clutching my phone with Remy Reed's engagement photos still glowing on the screen. Holy shit. I remembered dying. My hands shook as I reached for my phone. March 15th, 2021. The date I'd been dreading for 3 years without knowing why. The day Ryan would take me to Cafe Luna, order his usual cortado, and tell me he needed space to figure things out. The day he'd compare me to other women and find me lacking. The day I'd beg him to stay, except this time, I knew exactly what was coming. I scrolled through my texts. There it was, sent at 11:43 p.m. last night. Can we grab dinner tomorrow? Want to talk about some stuff. From Ryan, right on schedule. In my first life, I'd spent the whole day anxious and hopeful, wondering if he wanted to move in together, or maybe talk about our future. I'd even bought a new dress. God, I'd been so stupid. I called Morrison & Associates and left a voicemail for my boss. Hi Janet, it's Jordan. I'm not feeling well today, won't be coming in. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. I'd never called in sick for anything less than actual food poisoning, but today wasn't about playing it safe. I made coffee in my tiny kitchen, the same chipped mug I'd used for 2 years, and opened my laptop. Instead of checking work emails, I Googled Illinois business license requirements, then small business loans, then how to start a design company. All the things I'd dreamed about but never had the guts to research. All the plans I'd pushed aside because Ryan said entrepreneurship was risky and I should be grateful for job security. My phone buzzed. Ryan again. Looking forward to tonight, 7 p.m. at Luna? I stared at the message for a long time. In my first life, I'd responded immediately with heart emojis and, can't wait. This time I typed something different. We need to talk first. Meet me at Grind Coffee at 3 p.m. instead. Send. The next few hours passed in a weird haze. I sketched logo ideas on the back of utility bills, researched competitors, even started a rough business plan. My hands moved like they remembered doing this before, which was impossible but felt true anyway. At 2:30, I walked to Grind Coffee in Lincoln Park, the same place where Ren and I had our first date 2 years ago, back when he still listened when I talked about wanting to start my own company. Before he started suggesting I was getting ahead of myself. He was already there when I arrived, sitting at our usual table by the window. Dark hair perfectly styled, wearing the navy button-down I'd bought him for his birthday. He looked up when I walked in, and his smile faltered slightly, maybe because I wasn't wearing the dress I'd picked out to impress him. Maybe because my face didn't have that eager, anxious expression he was expecting. Hey, he said, standing to hug me. You look different. I feel different. I sat down across from him, not bothering with small talk. Ryan, I know what you're going to say tonight. His eyebrows shot up. What do you mean? You're going to break up with me. You're going to say you need space, that we want different things, that I'm not ambitious enough. I watched his face change, confusion shifting to something like panic. You're going to tell me about all the ways I don't measure up to other women you know. Jordan, I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. I leaned back in my chair, surprised by how calm I sounded. And you know what? You're right. We do want different things. I want someone who believes in me, who doesn't make me feel like I should be grateful for scraps. You want someone who makes you look good at networking events. Ryan's mouth opened and closed like he was trying to reboot. This clearly wasn't the script he'd prepared. So I'm saving us both some time, I continued. We're done. I deserve better than someone who's been mentally shopping for my replacement for months. That's not, Jordan, you're being crazy right now. And there it was, the word he always used when I said something he didn't want to hear. In my first life, it had made me doubt myself, made me apologize, and try to explain my feelings better. This time, it just made me tired. No, Ryan, I'm being clear. I stood up, slinging my purse over my shoulder. Good luck with whatever you're looking for. I hope you find someone who thinks settling for you is enough. I walked out while he was still sputtering, leaving him at the table with his perfectly styled hair and his perfectly planned breakup speech that he'd never get to use. The March air bit at my cheeks as I walked home, but I felt lighter than I had in months. maybe years. My phone started buzzing before I'd made it 2 blocks, but I didn't look at it. Back in my apartment, I spread my sketches across my kitchen table and really looked at them. Logo concepts for Beck Design Studio. Taglines about authentic branding for businesses that mattered. Ideas I'd been too scared to pursue because Ryan said they were unrealistic. My phone buzzed again, and again. I turned it off and kept drawing. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, I was choosing myself, and it felt like coming back to life. The notification sound from my laptop made me look up from the restaurant logo sketches, scattered across my kitchen table. 11:47 p.m., and I was still tweaking color palettes for Rosario's, a family-owned Italian place in Little Village. 3 months of running Beck Design Studio from my apartment, and I'd learned that inspiration didn't follow business hours. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Hi Jordan, this is Remy Reed. We have mutual friends from the marketing world. Heard about your new company and would love to catch up over lunch. Are you free this week?" I stared at the message, my coffee going cold in my hand. Right on schedule. In my first life, this lunch had been the beginning of Remy's careful infiltration of my social circle, all while she was secretly dating Ryan behind my back. She'd played the supportive friend so perfectly that I'd actually been grateful for her attention. This time, I knew exactly what she was fishing for. I typed back, "Sure, I'd enjoy that. How about Thursday at noon?" Then I suggested Bistro Margot in River North. Upscale enough for Remy's taste, public enough to keep things surface level. Thursday arrived gray and humid, typical Chicago summer weather that made my hair frizz despite my best efforts. I walked into Bistro Margot 5 minutes early, and spotted Remy immediately. She'd claimed a corner table with good lighting, wearing a cream silk blouse that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Her smile was perfectly calibrated, warm but not over-eager, successful but approachable. "Jordan." She stood to hug me, and I caught a whiff of expensive perfume. "You look amazing. Self-employment clearly agrees with you." "Thanks." I sat down, noting how she'd positioned herself to face the room while I had my back to most of the restaurant. Classic power move. "You look great too. How's the law firm treating you?" "Oh, you know how it is. Billable hours and difficult clients." She waved dismissively, then leaned forward with practiced interest. "But tell me everything about Beck Design Studio. I'm so impressed that you took the leap." For the next 20 minutes, Remy played her part flawlessly. She asked thoughtful questions about my business model, praised my courage for leaving corporate life, even mentioned a few potential clients she might be able to refer. If I hadn't lived through this conversation before, I might have been charmed. But I caught the subtle probes, the way she casually asked if I was seeing anyone special these days, how she mentioned running into mutual friends without naming them. The slight pause when I mentioned that breaking up with Ryan had been the best decision I'd made all year. "Oh, you and Ryan broke up?" Her eyebrows lifted in perfectly performed surprise. "I had no idea. I'm so sorry." "Don't be. It was overdue." I took a bite of my salad, watching her process this information. "We wanted different things. He needed someone who'd make him look good at networking events. I needed someone who actually believed in me. That's so mature of you." Remy's voice carried just the right note of admiration mixed with sympathy. "Breakups are never easy, even when they're for the best." I almost laughed. In my first life, I'd poured my heart out to her about how devastated I was, how I worried I'd never find anyone else. She'd been so understanding, so supportive, such a good friend that I'd never suspected she was already sleeping with my ex-boyfriend. "Actually, it's been liberating," I said instead. "Amazing how much energy you have for building your own life when you're not trying to fix someone else's." Something flickered across Remy's face, too quick to interpret, but I caught it. She recovered smoothly, suggesting we should definitely do this again soon, and maybe grab drinks next time to really catch up properly. "I'd love to," I lied, "but I'm swamped with client work for the next few weeks." Rain check? We hugged goodbye on the sidewalk, and I watched her walk toward the parking garage in her designer heels. In my first life, I'd felt so grateful that someone like Remy wanted to be my friend. This time, I just felt tired by the performance. I needed air that didn't smell like expensive perfume and hidden agendas. Millennium Park was a 15-minute walk, and I let my feet carry me toward the bean without really thinking about it. The afternoon crowd was lighter than usual, too hot for most tourists, too early for the after-work joggers. I was almost past the benches when I noticed someone sketching. Carl Snyder sat alone on a bench facing Cloudgate, a small notebook balanced on his knee. I recognized him from networking events, always in the back of the room, listening more than talking, asking the kind of questions that made you think. He wore a faded green t-shirt and jeans instead of his usual business casual, wire-rimmed glasses sliding down his nose as he concentrated on his drawing. In my first life, I'd walked right past him, too focused on Ryan, too insecure to approach someone I didn't know well. This time, I stopped. "That's really good," I said, nodding toward his sketch. He looked up, startled, then smiled when he recognized me. "Jordan Beck, right? We've been at a few of the same events." "Yeah, you always ask the best questions. Mind if I see?" He turned the notebook toward me. The sketch captured the bean's curves perfectly, but what struck me was how he'd drawn the people reflected in its surface, not just shapes but actual expressions, tiny moments of wonder and connection. "You're an artist," I said. "Hobby." He closed the notebook, but not defensively. "Helps me think. I heard you started your own design company. How's that going?" I sat down on the other end of the bench, leaving space between us. Terrifying and amazing in equal measure. Some days I wonder what the hell I was thinking, leaving a steady paycheck to chase something that might not work. "But you're doing it anyway." "Yeah. Turns out I'm tired of playing it safe." I glanced at him sideways. "What about you? Still doing the investment thing?" "Still doing the investment thing." His smile was self-deprecating. "Though I'm getting pickier about what I support. More interested in companies that are building something meaningful than just chasing quick returns." We talked for an hour. About art and business, about the difference between success and fulfillment, about Chicago's creative community, and how hard it was to find authentic work in a world obsessed with metrics. Carl listened like he actually heard what I was saying, asked follow-up questions that showed he was thinking about my answers. When I mentioned struggling to find the right investors who understood creative businesses, he handed me his card. "I'd love to hear more about what you're building," he said. "If you're ever looking for someone who gets that the best businesses solve real problems instead of just making money." I looked at the simple card, just his name, phone number, and email. No fancy title or company logo. "I might take you up on that." "I hope you do." Walking home, I felt something I hadn't experienced in either lifetime. The possibility of building something real with someone who saw my actual worth. Not the version of me that made them look good, not the potential they wanted to mold me into, but the person I was choosing to become. My phone buzzed with another text from Remy, suggesting coffee next week. I deleted it without responding. Some friendships weren't worth the performance. The portfolio spread across my desk looked like a rainbow exploded in the best possible way. 6 months of building Beck Design Studio from my kitchen table to an actual office in Wicker Park, and I still got a little thrill seeing our work laid out like this. 3 employees now, real clients, and enough steady income that I'd stopped checking my bank balance every morning with my coffee. "Jordan?" Sharon Kennedy appeared in my doorway, tablet in hand and that slightly apologetic expression she got when she had to deliver news she wasn't sure I'd want to hear. "There's someone here to see you."
Ryan Mitchell?
"He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's personal." I looked up from the logo concepts I'd been reviewing, my pen hovering over notes about color psychology. "Ryan, here, at my office." In my first life, he'd never once visited me at work, never showed the slightest interest in what I did all day, beyond asking if I'd gotten a raise yet. "Did he say what he wanted? Just that he'd like a few minutes of your time?" Sharon's dark eyes were curious but professional. She'd been with me for 2 months now, fresh out of UIC with a business degree and an intuitive understanding of office dynamics that made her worth twice what I was paying her. I almost laughed. The audacity was impressive, really. "Send him back. And Sharon? Give us maybe 10 minutes, then come find me with some urgent client matter that needs my immediate attention." Her smile was quick and conspiratorial. "Absolutely." Ryan appeared in my doorway 30 seconds later, and I had to admit he looked different. Tired, maybe. Older somehow, though it had only been 6 months. His hair was still perfectly styled, his shirt still pressed, but something around his eyes had changed. "Jordan." Wow. He glanced around my office, the exposed brick walls, the design awards already accumulating on my bookshelf, the view of the Chicago skyline through windows that actually opened. "This is incredible. Really." "Thanks." I gestured to the chair across from my desk but didn't get up. "What can I do for you, Ryan?" He sat down, fidgeting with his watch. The same silver one I'd helped him pick out for his birthday 2 years ago. I wanted to apologize for how I handled things between us. The way I ended it wasn't fair to you." I leaned back in my chair, studying his face. In my first life, I would have been hanging on every word, desperate for this exact conversation. Now I just felt curious, like watching a movie I'd already seen. "Okay," I said. He blinked, clearly expecting more of a reaction. I've been thinking about it a lot. About us. I saw the article in Chicago Business Journal about your company, and I'm proud of you. I always knew you had this in you. That was rich. Did you? Of course. You were always so creative, so driven. I should have supported that more. I picked up my pen again, clicking it absently. Ryan, why are you here? I miss you. The words came out in a rush. I miss us. I know I screwed up, but I was wondering if maybe we could grab dinner sometime. Just to talk. To reconnect as friends. Friends. Right. I'd heard through the marketing world grapevine that things with Remy weren't going as smoothly as their Instagram posts suggested. Apparently, being with someone who treated relationships like strategic partnerships wasn't as fulfilling as Ryan had imagined. I appreciate the apology, I said carefully, but I'm seeing someone now. It wasn't entirely true. Carl and I had been spending more time together. Coffee meetings that turned into long conversations, text exchanges about everything from business strategy to his latest sketches, but we hadn't defined anything yet. Still, saying it felt satisfying in a way that surprised me. Ryan's face fell. Oh, I didn't know. Why would you? He sat there for another minute, clearly hoping I'd elaborate or maybe change my mind. When I didn't, he stood up. Well, I'm happy for you. Really, you deserve someone who appreciates what you've built here. I do, I agreed. After he left, I sat staring at the portfolio layouts without really seeing them. 6 months ago, that conversation would have wrecked me for weeks. I would have analyzed every word, wondered if I'd made a mistake, maybe even called him back. Now I just felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, not even pity. Just a mild sense of completion, like finishing a book I'd already lost interest in. Urgent client matter? Sharon appeared with perfect timing, holding 2 cups of coffee.
You're getting a raise, I told her.
I was hoping you'd say that. An hour later, Carl knocked on my doorframe. He'd traded his usual business casual for jeans and a forest green sweater that made his eyes look more blue than gray. His hair was slightly messed up, like he'd been running his fingers through it while thinking. Brought you something, he said, holding up a bag from the coffee shop downstairs. Figured you might need fuel for the afternoon push. You're becoming a bad influence on my productivity, I said, but I was smiling as I said it. Good, all work and no play makes Jordan a dull entrepreneur. He settled into the chair Ryan had vacated, looking infinitely more comfortable there. How was your day? Sharon mentioned you had an unexpected visitor. My ex stopped by to apologize and suggest we reconnect as friends. Carl's eyebrows rose slightly. How'd that go? I told him I was seeing someone. Are you? The question hung in the air between us, loaded with possibility. Carl's expression was carefully neutral, but I caught the slight tension in his shoulders, the way his fingers drummed once against his knee. I'm figuring that out, I said honestly. He smiled then, the kind of slow, genuine smile that reached his eyes. Good answer. We talked about the new client proposals he'd helped me connect with, about the gallery opening he was thinking of attending this weekend, about everything and nothing. When he asked if I wanted to grab dinner after work, I didn't hesitate. Yes. But somewhere with actual food, not just networking opportunities disguised as meals. I know just the place. That evening we ended up at Rosario's in Little Italy, the same family restaurant whose logo I'd designed from my kitchen table 3 months ago. The owner, Mrs. Rosario, spotted me immediately and insisted we try the new seasonal menu. Carl listened while she told him the story of how I'd captured exactly what her family wanted to convey, how the design had brought in new customers who understood what they were really offering. She's special, this one, Mrs. Rosario said, patting my shoulder before bustling back to the kitchen. She's not wrong, Carl said quietly after she left. Over wine and the best audiobook I'd ever tasted, Carl told me something that made my chest tight in the best possible way. I have a confession, he said, twirling pasta around his fork with the concentration of someone buying time. I noticed you years ago, at those networking events, back when you were with Ryan. You'd light up when you talked about design, about the projects you wanted to work on someday, but then you'd catch yourself, like you weren't allowed to want those things. I set down my wine glass. Why didn't you ever say anything? You were with someone, and honestly, I figured you were out of my league. His smile was self-deprecating. Took me a while to work up the courage to approach you that day at the park. I'm glad you did. Me too. Walking back to our cars later, the September air crisp with the promise of fall, I realized something that would have shocked my first life self. I'd spent so much energy focused on Ryan and Remy, on what I was losing and who was taking it, that I'd completely missed someone who actually saw my worth. Someone who'd been there all along, waiting for me to be ready to see it too. Jordan? Carl stopped beside his car, keys in hand. That someone you're seeing? I'd like to apply for the position. I laughed, surprising myself. I'll consider your application. That's all I can ask for. Driving home through the city lights, I felt something I'd never experienced in either lifetime. The quiet confidence that came from knowing I was exactly where I was supposed to be, with someone who wanted to be there too. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. Thanks for seeing me today. I hope we can stay in touch. I deleted it without responding and turned up the radio instead. The red dress was perfect, not because it made me look like someone else, but because it made me feel exactly like myself. I stood in front of the full-length mirror in my Lincoln Park condo, a far cry from that studio apartment where I'd died in my first life, and barely recognized the woman looking back at me. 2 years, Beck Design Studio now employed 12 people, had clients across the Midwest, and tonight we were nominated for Emerging Company of the Year at the Chicago Business Excellence Awards. The Palmer House Ballroom would be full of the same networking crowd I used to navigate so carefully, desperate for approval I thought I needed. You ready for this? Carl appeared behind me in the mirror, adjusting his tie. The navy suit brought out his eyes, and his hair was actually combed for once, instead of looking like he'd been sketching all afternoon. More than ready. I turned to face him, straightening his collar. Though I still can't believe we're here. I can. His hands settled on my waist, warm and steady. I've watched you build something incredible. Tonight's just everyone else catching up to what I already knew. We'd been together officially for over a year now, and he still said things that caught me off guard. Not the performative compliments Ryan used to offer when he wanted something, but observations that made me see myself through kinder eyes. The Palmer House Ballroom was exactly as elegant as I remembered from corporate events in my first life. All crystal chandeliers and gold accents that screamed old Chicago money, but walking in tonight felt completely different. I wasn't scanning the room for people who might validate my existence, or worrying about whether I belonged here. I belonged here because I'd earned it. Jordan Beck, a man with intelligent dark eyes and a press badge, approached during cocktail hour. Gabriel Bowen from the Tribune. I was hoping to get a few minutes with you about Beck Design Studio's growth trajectory. Of course. I shook his hand, noting the genuine interest in his expression rather than the bored professionalism I'd seen from reporters covering corporate fluff pieces. Gabriel's questions were thoughtful, probing. He wanted to understand not just what we'd accomplished, but how we'd done it. When he asked about the philosophy behind our rapid expansion, I found myself being more honest than I'd planned. Success isn't about accepting what other people think you deserve, I said. It's about knowing your own worth, and refusing to settle for anything less. Too many people, especially women, are taught to be grateful for opportunities that don't actually serve them. That's an interesting perspective. Personal experience. All the best business insights come from personal experience. Gabriel smiled, scribbling notes. One more question. What would you tell someone who's afraid to take the leap into entrepreneurship? I thought about my first life, about all the dreams I'd buried because Ryan convinced me they were unrealistic. I'd tell them that the biggest risk isn't failing at something you care about, it's succeeding at something that doesn't matter to you. After Gabriel left, Carl handed me a glass of wine and nodded toward the far side of the room. Interesting company tonight. I followed his gaze and spotted them immediately. Ryan and Remy posed near the silent auction tables like they were at a photo shoot. She wore black, sophisticated, expensive, perfectly calculated. He looked older, more polished than when he'd visited my office 6 months ago, but there was something brittle around his edges. In my first life, seeing them together had destroyed me. Tonight, I felt nothing but mild curiosity, like spotting actors from a show I used to watch. Jordan. Remy's voice carried across the cocktail chatter as she approached, Ryan trailing behind her. Her smile was radiant, practiced. I can't believe we keep missing each other. You look absolutely stunning. Thank you, you look lovely too. I kept my voice pleasant, professional. Remy, Ryan, this is Carl Snyder, my partner. The word hung in the air with deliberate ambiguity. Partner in business, partner in life. I let them wonder which I meant. Carl's handshake was firm, his smile polite but unimpressed. I've been following Beck Design Studio's success, Remy continued, her eyes bright with something that might have been genuine admiration or carefully disguised envy. We really need to have that catch-up session we keep talking about. I'd love to hear how you built all this. I'm sure you would. I took a sip of wine, watching her face. Though I imagine you've been busy with your own projects. Something flickered across her expression, too quick for most people to catch, but I'd learned to read her tells. The calculated charm slipped for just a moment, revealing something sharper underneath. "Well, we should let you get back to your evening," Rand said, speaking for the first time. His voice was carefully neutral, but I caught him glancing between Carl and me with poorly concealed curiosity. "Enjoy the rest of the event," I said, already turning away. When they announced the Emerging Company of the Year category, Carl squeezed my hand. I felt calm, centered in a way that had nothing to do with whether we won or lost. We'd already succeeded at the thing that mattered most, building something meaningful. Biggie Design Studio. The applause was warm, genuine. Walking to the stage, I caught sight of Gabriel Bowen in the press section, his pen moving across his notepad. In the audience, Carl's smile was proud but not surprised. This was what he'd expected all along. At the podium, looking out at the sea of faces, I thought about the speech I'd prepared. Professional, gracious, appropriately humble. Instead, I found myself speaking from somewhere deeper. 2 years ago, I was working at a job that paid well but didn't fulfill me. In a relationship that looked good on paper but made me feel small. I thought that was what success looked like, being grateful for what other people decided I deserved. The room was quiet, attentive. Building Beck Design Studio taught me that real success isn't about settling for good enough. It's about having the courage to pursue what actually matters to you, even when other people think you're crazy for wanting more. I found Carl in the audience, his eyes steady on mine. The best businesses solve real problems for real people. But first, you have to solve the problem of believing you deserve to try. The applause was longer this time, warmer. Walking off the stage, I felt something I'd never experienced in either lifetime. Complete alignment between who I was and what I'd built. Later, Carl and I walked along Lake Michigan, the city lights reflecting off the water like scattered diamonds. I'd kicked off my heels and was carrying them, the cool sand between my toes grounding me after hours of networking and congratulations. "That speech," Carl said, his jacket slung over his shoulder. "That wasn't what you'd planned to say." "No, it wasn't." It was better. We stopped walking, facing each other in the moonlight. The waves lapped quietly against the shore, and somewhere in the distance, the city hummed with its usual energy. "Jordan," Carl's voice was soft, serious. "I love you." The words settled between us, simple and true. In my first life, love had felt desperate, conditional, like something I had to earn and keep earning. This felt different, steady, real. "I love you too," I said, and meant it completely. He kissed me then, gentle and sure, and I realized something that would have shocked my first life self. The best revenge wasn't destroying the people who'd underestimated me. It was building a life so fulfilling that their opinions became irrelevant. Walking back to the car, my phone buzzed with notifications, congratulations from clients, interview requests from reporters, LinkedIn messages from people who suddenly wanted to connect. I glanced at them briefly, then put the phone away. Tomorrow I'd return calls and answer emails. Tonight, I just wanted to exist in this moment, successful, loved, and finally completely myself. In my first life, I died alone in a studio apartment, scrolling through other people's happiness. Tonight, I was living my own.